Okay, everyone. I bought a 2008 PT Cruiser, and the problem is that I would drive the car and I'd be driving fine. I'd get about 5 miles from the house, and the engine would be warmed up, and that's about the time it would just stall out in the middle of the road or a drive-through or anywhere, and you couldn't get it started. You'd be turning it over, and the starter would be turned over, but um, it was like there was no gas anymore, like the fuel pump was not working, I'd wait like, about like 2 minutes and then I could drive it again. But on the way home, because the engine's already warmed up, it would stall over and over again, it'd stall like all the way back to the house. I'd keep stalling in the middle of the road. I'd keep pushing it out of the road. And also, when it stalls and the engine cuts off, like the power brakes all of a sudden cut off too. And you don't have good braking anymore. I mean, you can sort of brake it. And you could use the emergency brake, which isn't that great. It's not like real brakes, but usually it would stall when I was like sitting idling at a light and I'm out in the middle of the road or I'm in a drive-through and all of a sudden, pow. So the problem is that I was chasing down the fuel system because I was like, oh, it's got to be a fuel system, right? So I went under the car, and this seems like a really huge hard thing to do, that like a last resort. You don't want to do this, but the truth is it's not very hard at all. It is a little hard the first time because you don't know what you're doing, but after that, because I had to do it like 3 times, like drop the fuel tank and look at the fuel system on there. After the first time, it's like really easy. It's just a couple bolts. You drop it down. It can have like half a tank of gas in there. It's got something in it so it doesn't spill once you pull off the hoses. So your gas isn't going to go everywhere. The car's not going to light on fire and all this stuff. It's not, you don't have to get down to the last drop or drain it or anything like that. I never did. But you could change the fuel pump even with like half a tank. But the thing is, like I'm saying, it's not really the fuel pump. So I changed my fuel pump. I was chasing that system forever. It's not really even a fuel system problem. And then, I dropped it down several times and I was getting like weird evap codes, like saying low flow and stuff like that. And I was trying to figure that out and the fuel system at this point. And I spent tons of time chasing that. Luckily, like eBay, you can get a fuel pump and it's only like $50, so it's no big deal. And now it has a new fuel pump, so well. If you buy the fuel pump, it also comes with the fuel filter, and it also comes with the fuel pressure regulator. So I mean, pretty much the whole system is replaced right there. I mean, there's some odds and ends like the fuel rail sensors and stuff like that you can mess with, but pretty much that system's done. I see people replacing the fuel pump over and over and over again because the car keeps stalling. And why do you think that it's the fuel system? Because it's not giving you any kind of code saying what the heck's going on. And there's no there's no codes related to the fuel pressure system that are even going to come up. And then every time the car stalls out, it seems like the fuel pump just stopped working, and then, you're chasing down like, oh, is it an electrical problem with the fuel? Is it fuel? It's not really the fuel system. I mean, it might be on your car, but I'll tell you, on my car, and probably a lot of cars, if those are your symptoms, that it warms up and then it starts stalling like crazy, it's actually that your car is overheating. And then the ECU, the computer in there, is shutting off your fuel pump to stop you from driving and overheating your car and messing up your heads. So yeah, the fuel pump went off. It was shut off by the computer, but it's not a fuel problem. It could, I want you to think about this, it could, because it was for me, the whole time, it was an overheating problem. Now, you're going to think, well, I hear the fan come on, but there's two fans. There's a slow speed fan and there's a high speed fan. And you say, oh, I don't see my heat gauge spiking up to like crazy, and I instantly I know, right? But a lot of times when this is going on, the heat sensor for the coolant is not working at all. It's not working. And so you have no way of knowing that it has anything to do with heat, and you think, oh, I hear the fan coming on. It's not heat. So I'm going to give you some ideas of things that you can look at for the heat system, because for me, that was it. And if you're going out you're getting like 5-6 miles from your house, and then all of a sudden, you know that the car is warmed up by then, and all of a sudden stalling, and then you get going and then it stalls, and then it cools down a little bit and then it stalls, and then it cools down just a little bit and it stalls, and you keep trying to get back home. It's a heat problem. So real quick, let's do some tests. And these are just real basic tests, that you can do at home and kind of gauge whether this is your problem. So let's start here. Okay, so with mine, the heat gauge, the second I would turn it on, it would be at half, just instantly. I got the door open. So the second I started the car, it would already be at half. And if it's not starting at cold, your sensor is broken, for sure. See, because it should take, idling, it'll take about 5 minutes to get just under half, and then it'll slowly creep up to half, and then the high-speed fan should kick in. Also, if you're driving, it takes about like 2 minutes for it to warm up and get to just under half, and then maybe about 5 minutes it'll reach the true halfway mark. And at that point, you're in trouble because your car's going to start stalling out right there. Now, how do we know if your low speed fan is working? We can check that first. Okay, so here's a quick test that people do. Okay, so now right at this moment the fan is not working because it's not running because the car is cold. We're going to check the low speed fan, and there's a low speed and a high speed fan, which are the same fan. They're just different relays that operate at different speeds. So we're going to crank this all the way to cold, and we're going to crank this all the way up, and we're going to make sure that button's activated so that we have the AC on. Now come over here. You can put your hand right there, and you can instantly feel that the fan is running. You feel all kinds of air passing past your hand. So right there, we know that the low speed fan is working, but it doesn't mean the high speed fan is working. And that was my problem, and that's a lot of people's problems. So if the low speed fan is working, there's like fuses and things in here, and like a fan relay in here, but that's working. Otherwise, the fan relay over here wouldn't be working. So we don't have to worry about the one over there. We already know that's working. Now this one right here, on your left, see, we're right at the radiator right here. These are the relay fans for the radiator. The one on your left is the slow speed relay, and the one on the right over here is the high speed fan relay. So we know that this one's already working, right? Because we turned on the AC and the fan was blowing. So now, how do we know if this relay is working? Honestly, I mean, you could pull it and do some tests with a voltage meter or blah, blah, blah. If you know how to do that, or you can look up how to do that, and I didn't find anything. What I did is this, you can actually buy it. It's a common relay for a bunch of cars. You can actually buy it for like $20 at AutoZone and just stick it in there. and then start test driving the car. And when it gets really hot, you know, see if the AC is coming on or if it's not coming on. And, you know, most likely it'll start working, and that'll be it. But there's a few other things I want to go over real quick. Now, another thing that you need to worry about is your radiator. Is it really working? And it could be working a little bit, but is it working? Is it not working very well, and it's starting to get gunked up, and it's starting to get to a point where it's becoming a problem, and it may still be passing some liquids through, but it's not doing it enough to keep your car from turning itself off. Okay, so what you can do to find out if your AC is in good condition, just, you know, like a real basic test, you know. I mean, it's not super scientific or anything, but this is what people do. If they say this is happening, then for sure you got a real problem. So here's the thing, like, now once the flange, okay, you turn on the car and you heat it up and you get it up to full running temperature, the little flange in there is going to open up, and it's going to start circulating through this pipe, and it's going to go through here, and it's going to come out the bottom. Now you should be able to touch this real quick. Like, I mean, right now the car's cold, but you should be able to touch it just real quick, and it should be blazing hot. It's not going to like burn and scald you or something, but you touch it real quick, you're going to say, dang, that's really hot. And when you go under the car, there's another tube just like this, and if you touch that tube and it's not exactly, and the car has to be fully warmed up, if it's not exactly the same temperature by feel, you go like this and you say it feels exactly the same heat. If it feels a little cooler, then your AC is probably gunked up, and your radiator is probably gunked up, and you need a new radiator. Okay, so here's the lower radiator tube, and it's kind of on the left side of the car, in the front, of course, right? And be careful about, don't touch the engine or anything like that, but be real careful. I mean, mine's cold right now, but you should be able to touch it just for a second, and it should feel exactly the same as the one above, because that same hot liquid, it should be flowing through there, and that's why it should be the same temperature. Now, another test that you can do for your cooling system is, you know, if you're wondering if your water pump is working, like, in just, you know, basically, is it working at all? You know, I mean, it's no guarantee that it's working at 100% capacity, but is it working at all? The thing is, if the water pump is working and it's circulating the fluids, then that means that your heater should work. So, and, you know, I'll tell you, that heater should be, like, once the car is warmed up, the heater in these cars just throw fire. You know, it's just hot as all heck that comes out of that. Like, it's probably the hottest heater that I've ever had in a car. Sometimes it's too much, you know. So what we're gonna do is start the car. It's beeping on me. So we're gonna start the car, and then what you do is just crank it up to full heat, throw that on, and it takes a second, but you know, if your car is warmed up, this should be just like immense heat coming out of these vents, like crazy amounts of heat. And you know, if the water pump wasn't working at all, it wouldn't be circulating into the heater core, and there would be no heat. That would be a for sure sign that that is a problem. And hopefully that's not your problem, because if you look up videos on that, that is extremely hard to replace. You have to practically pull the whole engine to get to that water pump, and it's a nightmare. I would suggest taking it somewhere at that point. So real quick, I'll show you some little problems you'll have with replacing these parts and how you can go about it. Okay, for your temperature sensor, it's like way down You know, it's over on this side of the engine, so you can see, but it's over by these hoses that run to the AC and stuff like that. But this is the coolant temperature sensor, and it's way down there. Now you can sort of see it. It's hard to even find a way to see it, but it's clear down in that hole down there. So basically it's down on the side of that, like right below here, and it's right down there. So in order to get that off of there, really what I found is I was already replacing the AC, and I had the radiator, and I had the whole radiator and like all this whole front panel and this middle part and everything is already pulled out. The fan, this was just a big open area because I was working on that, so it was easier to get into there. But kind of what you have to do is there's 3 bolts on this thing, and you remove that, and then you can pull the electrical piece off of there. Then you have to put it back on because you can't get any torque, you know, unless you're going to lock this onto like a shop bench or something with the vise or something. You can't get any torque to get that part back off again. So now you got to put it back on so that you can get it off. And basically what you do is you got to manhandle these tubes out of the way, and they're kind of stiff, but you have to pull them out of the way. And you can't get this thing all the way down there because this part is too wide, and it's just not going to fit down there. But what you do is you get one of these that has the doesn't have the ratchet end on it, and it's much slimmer, and you can push that down into there like that, and then you're going to reach your other hand down here, and you're going to help fit that onto there. And what you're going to end up doing is you have to crank this all the way into here and then pop it loose. Then you're going to pull this socket off of here and turn it just one turn and put it back on. And then you're going to have to do that several times, like keep sticking it down there, and like, you know, each time like wedging it into here a little ways. And after you do that, like maybe 3-4 times, then you could take the socket and you can reach your hand down there, you know, like this, and be twisting it, and then eventually you can just untwist it with your hands. And what I did is at that point I just undid the 3 bolts again, and of course you have to undo these 2 top bolts right there and there and get this thing off of there as well. But then what you do is you pull it out, and then you can use this thing and just like tighten it on there by hand and hold it in your hand, the whole piece, you know. And you can tighten it on there and then put the 3 bolts back in, and clip the electrical back on there, put the 3 bolts back in, and it's going to be done. And you know, I was able to get it plenty tight, and it's not leaking, and I didn't have any problems with it at that point. But it is a mess. It is a real mess to get to that thing. Now, as far as the radiator system, like replacing the radiator, and there's actually like there's the main radiator, and then there's like a transmission radiator in front of that, and there's like a oil cooler radiator in front of that. And you might want to consider buying all those and looking into videos on how to replace all those, and think about replacing all of them at once would be a good idea, since you have all this torn apart, because it's actually 3 different radiators layered up here. It's really weird. But the thing is, you know, and they're all really cheap. They're all like $50 if you buy it off of eBay. Like if you have another car and you're not like an emergency, you have to get it done right now. But yeah, so it's actually not too hard to do. You take off of these bolts right here and here. This whole piece comes off. You push it down and pull it up, and it pops loose when you do that. And then you take off some bolts here, and you take that off, and you take this part off, and the little bolt down there. And then, you know, there's really good videos on it, on how to do this. And you know, you drain it first, and you pull off this lower and upper hose, And then you don't have to pull these fan relays off. You just pull one down there, and there's like 6 bolts here, and you take that off, and then you take your other one out, and then you just start reversing it, and pretty much done. The one thing is is when you fill it back up, that you need to watch a video on how to fill it up correctly. If you fill it up correctly, you won't have any bubbles. It'll just be really easy. It was simple. You do it the first time, it's so simple, and there's no problems. But if you're not filling it up correctly, you will definitely end up with bubbles, and your engine could overheat. There could be bubbles in the hose, and then, you know, you're gonna stall out again. It'd be, you know, so we're trying to keep that from happening. But here's the thing. Watch a video on how to do this, and you have to like you have to turn the heater core to all the way on and all this other stuff, and then there's a little drainage flange down here that you pop open, and then you have to watch and make sure that bubbles aren't coming out. And really, I only did that for like maybe a minute, and no bubbles were coming through as I was refilling it, and I just said, that's probably good, and I was done with it. You don't have to spend all day like flushing like tons of liquid through it. But it's a pretty easy situation, really. I mean, you'll probably be out here for like, you know, 4 hours like doing this, but just, you know, grab a coffee and just relax and do it one step at a time, and put all your bolts into like little separate things. Like, it really wasn't that complicated, but what I did is I put my bolts, you know, I lined them up like one by one. I put the first set of bolts, the second set, the third, and there was like 5 sets of bolts, and then I just went backwards with it. Because a lot of these bolts are very, very similar. A lot of them are just 10 millimeter, and you could get them mixed up, you know. Okay, in order to replace this thing, it's a little complicated, so I wanted to show you real quick. You grab it with this, and you're gonna pull up, because right there at the back, it's locked onto the fan, and there's like a little thing where you just slide it up, and it's gonna pop off of there, and it's tight. The wires are real tight, so it's kind of hard to pop that off of there, but you gotta start there. And then you're gonna grab it again with these pliers, you know, and get a good hold on it. And what you're gonna do at the same time, because this is complicated, like, there's a little clip there, and you have to push it in. See that, how it's pushing in? And you gotta wedge it off of your manifold, and you push that in, and you're gonna pull up at the same time with the pliers. And it's kind of hard, but you keep doing it, and all of a sudden it'll pop off, and you'll be like, oh, okay, it's coming, and it'll come off. And as far as like putting it back on, it just snaps together. It's really easy. But yeah, that right one, high-speed fan, that's something to replace for sure. $20. So anyways, yeah, I see tons and tons and tons of videos when you start looking, like, you know, like stalling, and there's so many people chasing down the fuel system, and they're cutting holes in the back seat, and they're replacing their fuel pump like 5 times, and they're like, I keep getting a bad fuel pump, and they're you know, is it the electrical system, is it the grounding? You know, there's all these different ideas, and like so many people are frustrated, and they just keep stalling out in the middle of the road, and it's a real nightmare. And the car is leading them in the wrong direction by giving them the absolute wrong signs about this. I mean, could it be your fuel pump? Maybe that's your problem, and maybe it is, I don't know. But I'll tell you, with my car, you got to think about, maybe it's not. Maybe the ECU is shutting your fuel pump off in the middle of the road, and that's why you can't start it, because it's overheating, and it's not telling you that it's overheating. You know, it's a real nightmare. And I saw another guy with the same problem. His gauge was stuck, and then his car was overheating, and he didn't know what was going on. And I mean, it took a long time, and I just kept throwing parts into it until I figured it out, and watching videos and reading the manual and everything else, and I eventually figured it out. So consider thinking about that. Maybe it's just overheating. Okay, also real quick, the correct antifreeze coolant that you put in here is 50/50, so it's already got water in it. You don't need to water it down. But basically this is the brand right here, the Peak coolant. And the most important thing about this is, according to the manual, it's got to have hybrid organic acid technology. HOAT technology is what it calls it in the book, and that's what it is. And so if it doesn't say that on there, then you need to look into the one that does. And see, this for Chrysler as well. But it's got to have that. That's what the book recommends. Now, there's a yellow one like this, and there's an orange one, and a lot of people put the orange one in, but it said something a little different, and the yellow one's working fine as well. And, you know, this also works for it. So, I don't know, you might want to do a deep dive on whether you want orange or yellow. And that's just, they put a dye in there so they can tell the different fluids apart. This is called gold. So, this is what I put into it, because it says it has that technology, the hybrid organic acid technology. So that's what I'm using, and it's working fine. And also, here's a really good Haynes repair manual that you can get for this car, and 2001 through 2010. And it's a really good repair manual, but honestly, a lot of times, not everything I need to know is in here, and I gotta go to YouTube, and sometimes YouTube is a better source, but it's good to also have this as well.